Welcome back. We continue to look ahead to today's supplementary budget that will be tabled by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. We're expecting it to be at 3 o'clock. But let's get a sense of what we're talking about here. What is a supplementary budget? I want to bring in somebody that's in the know, my colleague Nompumelelo Siziba. She's standing by in Auckland Park. Nompu, a very good morning to you. So as you know, the best place to start is at the beginning. So help me break this down for the viewers in terms of what is a supplementary budget. Supplementary budget.
Thanks very much, Blaine. Thanks very much, Blaine. So we do have, of course, this very unprecedented occasion, a budget in the month of June. It's not happened before in South Africa in the new dispensation since 1994. And of course, that's because of the COVID-19 impact. A couple of months ago, of course, President Ramaphosa did announce that there was going to be a 500 billion rand stimulus, or not stimulus, but a relief aid program to assist the economy following the near closing down of the economy because of COVID-19 and to curb the spread of the infections. So that involved the government putting forward about 50 billion rand to help with the social assistance net with people who claim social benefits, getting a little bit extra between the months of May and October. And of course, as well, they also provided, or they have guaranteed, about 200 billion rands in terms of loans that can be given by commercial banks to SMEs that are struggling. Those SMEs have to be making a turnover of just under 300 million rand. But what has happened with that particular situation is that not many people have actually taken it up, and that's because of the very rigorous approval application process that the banks apply, and apparently that is being re-looked at so that more businesses can be helped. Of course, we've heard that because of the lockdown, a number of businesses have had to shut down. We've also heard, quite apart from the COVID-19 impacts, a number of companies that were already not doing that well before COVID hit us. They've announced a number of retrenchments, Edcon being one of them. Of course, we did hear that the business rescue process has been approved, and that could save some 17,000 jobs. You know, they were looking at probably cutting about 22,000. So there've been massive ramifications. And ultimately today, Finance Minister Tito Mboweni is going to be rejigging or adjusting his budget. That's why it's called the special adjusted budget, to take into account the 500 billion rand, which was obviously not foreseen at the time of the February budget 2020, when COVID-19 was definitely not on the horizon for us. We thought it was a China problem, a Europe problem, and so on. But of course, it eventually came to our shores. So he's going to be adjusting a number of issues there. In the February budget, he was planning to cut about 160 billion rand over the next 3 years, and he was looking to cut public sector wages in particular. The public sector has been very clear that if the minister does go ahead and reneges on giving them the increase that they were expecting for fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021, there will be hell to pay. And of course, you know, they're saying right now in the time of COVID, they're having to, risk their lives and so on to go to work and educate our youngsters. And they say that it's a slap in the face that they're not getting the increase that was agreed in 2018. But the Treasury says they just simply don't have the money. So what has happened is that SARS, the South African Revenue Service, has come out a couple of months ago to say that given what we expect to happen with the economy and the impact of the COVID-19 lockdown, we expect to be down in terms of the revenue intake by about 285 billion rand. In the meantime, government's costs have had to spiral out of control with this 500 billion rand. They've had to go out to international institutions to assist with financial aid because they can get a cheaper interest rate there. Unions, or at least the alliance parties, have not been very happy about that. The ANC alliance partners have not been happy about that because they're worried that this could be a precursor to South Africa going cupping hand to the likes of the IMF the International Monetary Fund, in order to help rejig the South African economy. Growth is expected to contract anywhere between 7% and 16% in the South African economy, which is very serious indeed. The budget deficit, the government had forecast that our budget deficit would be about 6.5%. The budget deficit being the difference between the revenue that comes into the fiscus and the spending that has to be done. So that's expected to widen quite substantially, and there are no revenues coming in. So it's a very difficult situation that the minister is faced with. We know for certain that there are going to be major impacts on the economy, people being out of jobs, so less tax revenue coming in that way. And because people are sensitive about, their economic stability, people are less inclined to go out and spend. That also affects the likes of your value-added tax revenues for the fiscus. And in the meantime, government has all these priorities that it must fix. So we're expecting that government will be making major cuts here and there. We don't know whether they're going to dare to go and not give the public sector workers the increases that they were expecting for this fiscal year 2020. So that's broadly the picture that we're seeing. But the South African economy is in dire straits. People are losing their jobs, and some people won't get their jobs back. Of course, yesterday we saw the Q1 unemployment number that ticked up to 30.1%, but it's expected come the second quarter that figure will be far higher. So Blaine, a very negative situation, a negative backdrop, and it's going to be interesting to see what tools Finance Minister Tito Mboweni has at his disposal to address these myriad of issues.
And the same with regards to the second quarter figures regarding the unemployment rate. I mean, we know some of the measures that were taken in order to curb the spread of COVID-19 was to shut down basically the economy. A lot of people, a lot of companies had to shut down. Some might not even open post the various levels that we go down in terms of this risk-adjusted strategy. Revenue collection, you say it will be down, the tax base will shrink. Q1, we see 30.1%. I shudder to think what Q2 will be.
Yeah, no, it's going to be dire, Blaine, because, companies were not receiving revenue. We know that government and even the private sector tried to step into the gap in terms of the revenues that people were not receiving. So workers were able to tap onto the UIF TER scheme, but they had to do that through their employer. And what we're hearing is that not everyone was successful. Not everybody got what they needed to get. And remember, that was only a percentage of the income that they would be used to getting. So if suddenly your cloth has shrunk so massively, it's also going to determine the extent to which you go out and spend. With businesses as well, some did try and access the private sector funds that were made available. And as I mentioned, around the 200 billion rand guaranteed loan guarantee scheme that's been provided by government, not everyone has tapped onto that because some of the terms and conditions are seen as too rigid because they're being applied by the commercial banks. They are looking to rejig that, and perhaps that's one of the areas or one of the issues that will be announced in the Finance Minister's adjusted budget later today. So, the unemployment situation is going to be dire, and it's problematic, especially for those who have lower skills, because, it becomes very difficult to find the next job. I think for people who have mobile skills, who are able to work from home and even work internationally in their homes, they have a bit more scope to adjust to this very negative situation. But Blaine, remember, this is a global phenomenon as well. You've seen what's happened in the United States in terms of their jobs numbers. So many people have gone out to claim unemployment benefit and so on. But I think they're quite privileged in the sense that they have a net. Everyone has a net there whereby they can apply for funds and so on and so forth. I think in South Africa, we're very limited because any assistance that's given is very temporary. Towards the end of this month, of course, I think it will be the last time or the last reprieve that people will have in terms of being able to get payment breaks with their banks and so on. So come the end of July, people have to start paying back. What if they haven't got their jobs back? What if they don't have an income? It's going to be an absolute disaster. The banking sector does anticipate that they're going to see impairment impairments or bad debts to the tune of about 10%, whereas following the global financial crisis, that figure stood at around 6%. So this impact of COVID-19 has been far worse than anything else that we've seen in the past. International organizations like the World Bank are saying that it's basically close to or similar to the effects that were seen post-World War II. So real suffering is expected. And given that we have limited resources, it makes the situation very difficult indeed. And as our government goes out to borrow more money, it means that there's more of a debt burden and our budget deficit continues to widen. The economy is not growing at the pace that we would like. There aren't sufficient revenues coming to the fiscus. There are priorities that government needs to pay for but doesn't have enough resources for. I don't know how you could address this situation. It's a tough one.
You'll be hard-pressed to find a smarter woman on this story. Thank you very much indeed, Nompumelelo Siziba. Always in the know. We'll catch up with you in a little while. Nompumelelo Siziba there, live for us at Auckland Park.